where it fits. Sorry, what was the question?
Well, where
the question?
This new film, where does it fit into the context of Stormbugs?
Well, about 13 or so years ago, Philip and I started to organise re-releases of older material. There was, I suppose, what you might call a demand for it of sorts. A couple of people, and we started re-releasing older material that had been originally released on record or cassette, usually. And so we put out a few records over the past 10 years or so by various labels. And then, in terms of new material, stuff that we've created and recorded and so on, more recently than 1982 or 3, we did, in the past 10 years, we did, about 10 years ago, record some new stuff for an Austrian label. It was a limited edition EP called The Bugs Are Back. Prophetically or pressing. And we recorded and we released 4 new tracks that we'd recorded. And since then, what has happened is not an awful lot in terms of activity, except for the fact that last year we played live a couple of times, which was actually pretty much a first for us, even since the late 70s. So we did play live once or twice back in those days, but it wasn't anything quite like what we were doing this time round, which was more revisiting some of the older work and sort of reworking in such a way songs and so on, predominantly songs, because it's kind of easier in some ways to perform songs in a live situation than it is to get a whole load of tape loops and analog synthesizers and so on and so forth. Anyway, out of that part of that activity, we also have recorded some newer material, but this particular song that we're going to show the video for this evening came about slightly differently to all of that. But I guess it would be fair to say there isn't really a kind of normal process for the production of Stormbugs music.
It was quite convoluted, this one.
Yeah, this was more convoluted. It always happens kind of haphazardly.
Shall I describe the process?
My colleague here will describe the process.
Very quickly then, it started with a kind of a synthesizer track. I've been talking to this guy about doing some live stuff, and this is the guy Ed Pinson who runs the sound projector show. And I thought of revisiting this system where you have a sequencer which has kind of got 8 steps, and then you have a delay, and you let the sequencer feed into the delay. It builds up these kind of patterns, and the things fall on top of each other. Anyway, I recorded quite a lot of that, and that sat around. And then round about the time of the David Bowie, whatever the hell, Renaissance, did a kind of slightly spoofed track called Head Cleaner, which took one of these sequences, edited it down, added some kind of tongue-in-cheek over the top guitar, converted into parts, and just distributed it as an MP3 file to various people who weren't interested, but no, to various people. Stephen decided to add a vocal.
Yes, I decided to add a vocal.
He decided to add a vocal, which was quite difficult because it was quite a rackety track, so he was kind of singing against the wind, really. And that sort of sat there for a while. It kind of worked, but it didn't work that well, partly because some of the parts, it wasn't ever really intended as a song.
But in terms of the vocal, I mean, I had a kind of whole bunch of bits and pieces of lyrics kicking around. Some of them I wrote quite some time ago, but they were all sort of vaguely inspired by a kind of ecological philosopher called Tim Morton, and some of them were sort of almost direct lifts from lines from his book, not quite, but adapted. And it seemed to me that because this song was fairly continuous, rhythmic sort of driving piece, and it seemed to me to suit this set of lyrics because there is no kind of verse-chorus structure. It's all, if you like, it's all verse. It's just continuous. There is no refrain, and that kind of suited the structure of the music.
Kind of slow build up of the sequence.
Which was kind of why and I kind of surprised Philip, I think, slightly by actually writing a song to it. Anyway, over to you.
So we had the thing there, which was this backing of the vocal that Stephen had, which kind of worked, but didn't work that well. And that sat around for 3 or 4 months, I suppose. And
we kept batting it backwards and forwards.
Yeah,
and
sort of remixing it, and it was getting better. And then, having seen the video, having heard the song, I did, for whatever reason, perhaps part because of the lyrics, these kind of ecological lyrics, I did imagine this kind of video a little bit like that sequence, you know, that everyone did in the late 60s, early 70s in 2001 when you're moving across a landscape, you know the one. Anyway, fast forward to about 3 weeks ago when Stephen posted
it was at least 5 weeks ago.
About 3 weeks ago. Stephen posted a video on Vimeo, which is part of this kind of vaporware thing, which was of moving across this particular landscape. We had been messing around as part of the project that you know about with Google Earth. This shot across this beach in Wales, shot on Google Earth, and also accompanying this track was a kind of ambient drone, which Stephen had constructed from a kind of little section of looped music. Anyway,
yeah, it was constructed from a Welsh folk song, which was specific to this beach. The reason I went to this beach, partly, well actually the main reason I went to the beach in Wales, not on Google Earth, in Wales originally.
Actually went there in person.
I went there in person, yeah. I went there one day because I was interested in, there's a British writer and filmmaker called B.S. Johnson who died in 1973, who made this tremendous film on a beach in Wales called Fat Man on the Beach. And I was very keen on the idea of visiting the beach where he shot the film, because the beach is very specific as a location, and this particular part of Wales, in North Wales, in the Fleadh Peninsula, was very close to him. So I visited this beach, but on the day that we visited the beach, the weather was really wet. I spent 5 minutes on the beach and was soaked through just as a result of the kind of spray and the rain and the mist and stuff. So when I made this video, I went back to the beach on Google Earth, and the thing that I thought was quite interesting is that you can, it's often only by knowing a place, by going to it in person, that you can actually navigate your way around it on Google Earth. Otherwise you kind of tend to be lost. So I made this video from a kind of process of tracking across this beach on Google Earth at the ground view, which tends to flatten everything that's quite close to you, but still retains a level of kind of the illusion of 3 dimensions, but
Particularly in the distance.
So the loop that Philip was talking about was actually a heavily treated loop of a little flute solo from a song that's on the soundtrack of Fat Man on a Beach. So
I told you this was quite long.
So you returned to the source of the tune in virtual space.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, and then I posted this as part of the Vimeo project, which is where Philip picked up on it.
So yeah, so I was looking at this, and it visually looked like this thing that I had in mind that might have gone with the track, but I hadn't done anything about. And B, it sort of occurred to me that quite coincidentally, the loop was in the same key, getting a bit musical here, as the track which had been sitting around. So took the track and added the two together. Did have to do a bit of remixing and things, and not much though. So added the thing which then kind of shifted the key over slightly, added a few backing vocals to kind of cement the key, and Stephen then re-edited the video only slightly to match some of the changes in the music. And there we are. So by a rather convoluted and roundabout process, we ended up with a box of chocolates.
And we decided that, I mean, in terms of the song and the recording, it's quite, in many ways, it's quite different. It's atypical of what Stormbugs music has sounded like, but then you would kind of be a little hard pressed to find atypical Stormbugs sound anyway.
It sounds surprisingly, a lot of the early Stormbugs stuff, you know, is kind of in that, it's not noise, but it's sort of kind of quite electronic and rough-edged and occasionally atonal things. But whereas this actually sounds kind of, partly because of this loop, it actually sounds surprisingly smooth.
Yeah.
And is this
It's a bit like Coffee Mate's been out.
You can dance.
and is this part of a raft of forthcoming material?
Absolutely.
There's a digital B-side, which is the original sequencer track and the original the old 10 minutes of it.
Oh right, okay.
But that's kind of it. There probably won't be anything for another 10 years, but you know.
Well, so
Well,
this.
except there is, well, yeah.
Well, probably. No.
We might have a record out on Christmas, but yeah.
Christmas record,
Oh, like
Christmas
Flea.
#1.
Yeah. You've heard it already.
So is this an exclusive? Has this been screened anywhere before, apart from online?
No.
Apart from on YouTube, Vimeo, and
Yeah, but in real space, not virtual space. This is an exclusive, terrestrial
We've
exclusive.
saved it for you.
Oh, thank you.